Put your weapons down and step away from the vehicle.
Michael Corbitt is a brave cop who loves the thrill of the bust.
Good guy to have in a fight with you.
Oh!
He quickly rises to become the chief of police of a Chicago suburb.
Mike Corbitt ran the department with an iron fist.
But with a police department believing itself above the law.
Take your cut. That's what Chicago's always been about.
And a town in the grip of powerful mobsters, Corbitt is surrounded by the temptations of corruption.
It was the wild, wild west.
Extortion scams, violent crimes, and extramarital affairs that end with deadly consequences could just be routine mob activity.
People were reluctant to talk to the FBI.
Or is there a deeper, darker secret? Has one of Chicago's finest become corrupted by his own power? There are those in positions of power who do evil and who only think they are untouchable. In the southwest suburbs of Chicago, Summit, Illinois is the beat of patrolman Michael Corbitt.
10-4 dispatch, I'm on my way.
Young and eager, Corbitt is always on the lookout for action. Former Sergeant John Reed knew him well.
I worked with Mike for a while. He was raw-boned, bit of a braggart. Good guy to have in a fight with you.
He's a brave cop who's not afraid to risk his life in the line of duty.
When Corbitt was a kid, he always wanted to be a cowboy. He wanted to be a hero.
Put your weapons down and step away from the vehicle. You put your weapon down!
Corbitt developed this reputation of being really a tough guy.
He had a weapon that he carved notches on of people he shot. He was a shooter.
Put down your weapon! Hands up!
Somebody you wanted at your back, kind of courageous man who can really take care of a problem.
He had a reputation of shooting first and asking questions later.
You're a wild man, but you're gonna be great for the force.
Corbitt's boldness makes him a popular and successful cop. In just a few years, he lands a string of spectacular busts, earning him several commendations.
Mike, he had good instincts. He knew when someone was BSing him.
He was kind of charismatic and flamboyant.
He was a type A personality. He was likable. People respected him.
I think he enjoyed the reputation of being a tough guy.
Michael Corbitt is far from an average cop and hasn't been since the moment he donned a uniform. In 1963, Corbitt leaves high school and makes his family proud by choosing a career in law enforcement.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'm your new partner, Corbitt. Nice to meet you, man.
His father loved to see him in that police uniform. Ever since he was a kid, wanting to be heroic. And he was obviously a smart guy.
His beat is the small town of Willow Springs, Illinois, just 20 miles southwest of Chicago. Roger Griggs is a former FBI special agent who worked cases in the area.
Willow Springs was one of those towns that was always known to be a very corrupt place. Everything from drinking to drugs to prostitution to gambling.
There was a lot of mischief going on in town, gambling and jiggle joints.
Home to just 2,500 residents, Willow Springs boasts 40 taverns, 10 strip clubs, 5 brothels, 3 casinos, and numerous illegal gambling joints. And it's all run by the mob.
The mob, from the start, had several outposts in these small towns and suburbs on the outskirts of Chicago, and no one's watching them there. The FBI and the Chicago Police Department aren't really paying attention to these little towns, and the towns are easily corruptible.
The mobsters had a big say in who got the positions there, who was in office there, where contracts were. And of course, once you have some influence in high places, you can arrange things to occur in that jurisdiction so that you can be protected.
Nothing happens in Willow Springs without the approval of the Chicago Mafia. The mob even have officers from the Willow Springs Police Department working for them, as Corbitt learns on his very first patrol.
The department was notorious for getting drivers going through town, and then they would arrest them or give them a ticket.
They pull over 6 or 7 cars, and his partner goes to take care of it and ends up not ever writing a ticket. Corbitt is baffled by this. Finally says, okay, what's the deal? And his partner hands him money.
It's your cut.
It's Corbitt's first taste of police corruption.
I don't think someone wakes up in the morning and says, gee, I'm going to be a corrupt cop. I don't think that happens that way.
Lured by the promise of easy money, it's not long before Corbitt tries it for himself.
You never forget that first time. And that's the thrill that hooks you. It's like an addict.
Thank you, sir. You have yourself a good day.
You too.
And that's what kind of hooked him.
We make our choices in life. Those choices determine who we are.
All the money Corbitt extorts goes to the chief of police.
How much is in here?
7,000.
The young and impressionable Corbitt goes along with the extortion scheme. In return, he gets a small cut of the take and, shockingly, the rest goes to the Mafia.
Take your cut. That's what Chicago's always been about. That's what makes the mob go. That's what makes it run. To have people kind of greasing the wheels for all of their schemes to occur. That's just the way that the machine works.
The fact that Michael Corbitt became a police officer would make sense to him as far as having rules there that other people have to follow, but that he does not have to follow. Michael Corbitt likely had personality traits pre-existing that were priming him to become somebody who was very comfortable breaking laws and taking advantage of others.
To the rookie cop, payoffs are simply the price of doing business in a corrupt town. Corbitt seems to be taking the first steps towards a darker and more dangerous world.
He starts to think, wow, there are all kinds of ways I can make money.
Corbitt starts extorting protection money from illegal gambling joints.
Corbitt grew up with very strict parents who gave him beatings and whippings. He was bullied as a kid.
But when a gambling den owner refuses to pay up, it's Corbitt who's become the bully.
It's time to pay.
This was a guy who had
Got 1 more week.
the appropriate amount of anger and violence, greed, all of those kinds of ingredients. They're just the right package of sins.
Patrolman Michael Corbitt is beginning to make a name for himself with the Mafia. It's a turning point that will entangle him further in a deadly criminal underworld. Police officer Michael Corbitt has taken his first steps into the dangerous criminal underworld in the suburbs of Chicago.
Corruption is so endemic in Chicago, Illinois, Cook County, everywhere you go. Who do you know? Who do you pay off? That's how you get something in the state. That's the way it's always worked.
Looking for better opportunities for his scams and kickbacks, Corbitt transfers to the larger town of Summit, Illinois. His dreams of easy money are almost immediately realized when he meets local attorney Alan Masters.
How can I help you? There's a little business proposition I have for you.
Alan Masters is a fixer. If you went to Alan Masters with a DUI, burglary, or that sort of thing, Alan Masters had connections to various Cook County judges. He could get the case fixed.
Alan's friends and relations especially know the deal. Randall Turner was the brother of Masters' wife.
He said, you know, hey, if you ever get caught speeding, you know, down in the southwest suburbs here, he says, just mention my name. Here, take my car, just mention my name, and it'll be taken care of.
He took care of everybody. Took care of the judge, the state's attorney, the police, and some of this stuff goes away.
Masters' proposal to Summit PD's newest officer is simple. For every offender Corbitt refers to Masters, Corbitt will get 1/3 of Masters' fee.
You know how fast you're going there, buddy?
He would try to steer them to Alan Masters to be the defense attorney, and then Alan Masters would work with the judge if he could to get the guy off and split monies with Corbitt.
But if,
This escalation of criminality means Corbitt no longer needs to solicit bribes himself to make money.
see if he look off.
1/3 of a lawyer's fee is far more lucrative than a desperate motorist's spare change. Thanks to this kickback, Corbitt makes thousands of dollars a month, so much that he regularly forgets to cash his paycheck. Corbitt starts to enjoy the benefits his illegal income can provide: flashy cars and nights at casinos. He also embarks on a string of extramarital affairs.
He had several girlfriends.
But Corbitt is jealous and often violent.
One of his girlfriends wore a beehive hairdo and shot right through her beehive hairdo.
Michael Corbitt has lived most of his life not having any boundaries imposed on him, not having to work within the boundaries of the law. So there's a recklessness to the way he approaches things. He doesn't think things through the way you or I might think things through. For instance, he's engaging in extramarital affairs because he feels that there's nothing that he can't have. There's nothing that he's not entitled to. He doesn't hesitate to act on impulse.
He still did his job as a police officer, and as far as I know, he did it well enough to have made a career out of it.
Acting on a tip that they're planning a murder, Corbitt tracks down 2 prominent members of the Black Panthers movement.
Step out of the car. Now. Front of the vehicle.
Corbitt single-handedly, allegedly, approached these people and took them down.
What the hell is this? What? They're not even our guns!
Corbitt's arrests make headline news.
So in a way, it was a legitimate success. And he satisfied his mob guys by being such a success in doing mob business for them. So he was both the cowboy and the villain.
Corbitt's eager involvement in the corrupt underworld makes him very attractive to one man in particular, the boss of the Chicago Outfit, notorious mobster Sam Giancana.
He allegedly shared a girlfriend with John F. Kennedy. He follows in the line of the legend of all legends, Al Capone. He had some of that glamour.
Giancana needs trustworthy people like Corbitt in positions of authority.
You need to have people in police departments, in courthouses, and in elected offices in order to get done what they need to get done. He played both sides of the fence, and when Michael Corbitt proved to be as good at both being a police officer and a member of the mob, then his star rose and he became more and more important.
After 6 years at Summit PD, Corbitt journeys deeper into the dark world of the mob when Sam Giancana personally arranges for him to return to Willow Springs.
It's my pleasure today to announce our new Chief of Police, Michael J. Corbitt.
We learned that Sam Giancana, who was the head of the Chicago mob at that time, referred Mike Corbitt to Willow Springs for the police chief's job.
With Corbitt in office, Giancana tightens his grip on Willow Springs.
That was the moment when he was kind of knighted by Sam Giancana, if you will. The direct hand from the boss. And the moment I think everything probably changed from, that's when he's all in.
Being anointed by the mob is a huge step for Corbitt. He's collecting all the mob's money from Willow Springs and taking a huge slice for himself. Now, with the might of the Chicago Mafia behind him, he's practically untouchable. Corbitt throws a large, raucous party to celebrate. Many of his mobster connections attend, including his longtime friend, Joey Testa.
They were good friends over the course of time, and he used that to his advantage.
Corbitt is no longer working for his friends in the mob. He is the mob. Officer Robert Olson is now working for Corbitt in Willow Springs PD.
I think he loved being the chief of police. It gave him a lot of power, it gave him a lot of prestige. He was a man that you respected.
Corbitt continues working with crooked lawyer Alan Masters, and business booms because now he has most of the PD working the scam.
We were programmed to make arrests. If we didn't make the arrests and didn't make money for Mike Corbitt, then we didn't work. One year we arrested more people than the Illinois State Police, and we were number two in revenue next to the city of Chicago, and there were only 16 of us.
Corbitt continually finds new ways of making money. The more he makes, the bigger his cut.
Mr. Corbitt. He was selling stars to people who wanted to carry a weapon.
I hear you were the guy to get some badges around here.
Some individuals like to have a badge so that if they get stopped by a police officer in Chicago or another suburb, they can show that they're a cop.
I had been on the police department for about 3 years, and I pulled someone over that handed me a police star, and it said Willow Springs Police Department on it, and I didn't recognize the gentleman. So I said, "Where are you a police officer?" He said, "Willow Springs."
But 8.
He said, "Call Corbitt." So I got Mike Corbitt on the phone, and Mike said, "Just let him go, he's one of us."
There was a lot of badges for a town of 4,000 people. He had 16 full-time police officers, and I think he ordered 400 stars.
This single scam nets Corbitt, and of course, the mob, around $400,000.
He was what they call in the mob an earner. You know, he was a guy who could make money. And he was flashy and making it known that he had come into wealth. He had that Burt Reynolds mustache and Corvette and the cowboy hat and the garbage bags of money.
Corbitt has graduated to a new level of wealth and builds a $500,000 home with a swimming pool.
If you drove by his house, it looked like a drug lord's house. 6,000, 7,000 square feet. But he had a Corvette, he had a boat. That's not bad.
His flashy behavior starts to raise eyebrows with town officials. But Corbitt's mob connections mean no one acts on their suspicions.
None of the people in the community did anything. Had they complained about his power or why is he driving this car, maybe the world would have been different.
Someone like Michael Corbitt doesn't have boundaries. He doesn't recognize boundaries in himself because he's entitled to everything. The town is his to work the way he wants to work. He can take what he wants, use who he wants, become what he wants without any repercussions whatsoever.
So confident of his cloak of untouchability, Corbitt decides to do some freelance work on the side.
There was a bar, grill sort of place, that a man named Raymond Gluzek was the proprietor.
Gluzek is desperate, unreliable, and not the type with whom the Mafia do business. But fueled by greed, Corbitt is seduced by an unusual offer from Gluzek.
Business was not going well, and Gluzek wanted to burn the building down for the insurance. And in order not to get caught, he made an arrangement with Mike Corbitt to handle the investigation and make sure he would not be charged with arson.
Once the tavern is destroyed, Corbitt ensures the fire investigation does not point to anything suspicious, and Gluzek collects the insurance.
And in exchange for that, then he provided Corbitt with about $7,000.
As police chief, Corbitt thinks he's in complete control of the situation.
I think people, when they get away with things like that, get to be arrogant about it.
But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Soon, Corbitt will descend so deep into the dark world of organized crime that nothing will be below him, not even murder. Police Chief Michael Corbitt is running the entire town of Willow Springs for the mob, lining their pockets, as well as his, with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Every kickback, extortion, and fraud scam deepens his ties to the Mafia, including mob-connected businessman Joseph Testa, who in June 1981 is finishing a round of golf.
Testa then in a relationship with Sam Giancana, and he was protected by the mob.
Testa had a lot of real estate down in Florida.
Testa is involved in a dispute with another mobster over money.
When you're in the mob, you're constantly looking over your shoulder. You don't ever really know who to trust, and every day could be your last.
There was a car bomb and his legs got blown off. He passed away, and him and Mike were pretty close.
Corbitt received a substantial amount of money from Testa's estate.
The actual figure is $800,000, plus Testa's pleasure boat.
And people were like, leaving money to the police. When you have these outfit connections, it was in a newspaper, it was kind of front page stuff.
What Corbitt doesn't know is that this incident brings him to the attention of prosecutor Thomas Scorza and the FBI.
What I got was a report from the FBI that he was the police chief of Willow Springs with mob connections. What Mike Corbitt would do for a small amount of money was almost unthinkable to me. The FBI agents are vacuum cleaners, they listen to long stories from ex-mobsters, traitors within the mob. So he was reputed to be in the pocket of the mob.
The mob makes a big deal about loyalty and their code of honor, but they're probably the least loyal organization you will find on the planet, because the second you become even a hint of a problem, you're gone. They'll whack you. They enforce this loyalty and they try to make it seem like it's a code of honor and it's something with integrity, but that's just a cynical ruse to protect themselves and their business interests. They need to make you feel that way. They need to make you feel like you shouldn't ever talk, ever.
Well, we were looking at trying to put a case together on Mike Corbitt on public corruption. He was certainly, on the take. I think anybody could buy him.
There's enough evidence to warrant surveillance. But being a cop himself, Corbitt quickly catches on. He uses police resources to find out who is following him.
Hey, I need you to run a plate for me.
The car is registered to the FBI. But with his Mafia ties, Corbitt doesn't even fear the feds.
What happens to people like Corbitt is, after a while, they feel immune. You know, they feel like they've have so many connections, done so many favors, that they don't have anything to worry about, that everything will always work out.
Rather than lay low for a while, Corbitt becomes bolder and even more dangerous. So when Corbitt's crooked lawyer friend, Alan Masters, comes to him with a problem, he thinks nothing of offering to help. The problem? Masters' wife, Diane.
She was having an affair with a economics professor. She was a very attractive woman and a prominent person in the area.
My sister, she was extremely brilliant. She was big on poetry. She had an English degree. She had a dual degree in psychology. She started to realize she needed something different. She needed a connection that involved a lot more. And I think that's where the college professor came in.
Alan Masters was friends with a private investigator, and he was able to put a listening device on his home phone, and he captured a telephone conversation between Diane and her boyfriend. During that phone call, there was kind of a salacious conversation regarding their sex behavior the night before.
Alan heard it and went crazy, said he was going to kill her.
Jealous and hurt, Masters is also afraid that his wife knows too much about his illegal activities.
And I believe Diane was going to blow the whistle on Alan in regard to a lot of things that Alan was doing.
Take care of this.
Diane knew a lot about Alan Masters and probably knew a lot about Mike Corbitt.
She knew too much, and I think Diane made a mistake of threatening Alan.
She was going to report the Masters' activities to the IRS.
For Masters, there's only one option. He asks Corbitt to do the unthinkable, help kill and dispose of his wife.
I need her gone. Well, I have a deal. I have a deal.
Corbitt agrees.
Thanks.
He now thinks he can literally get away with murder.
Sometimes narcissists can ultimately become psychopathic narcissists. There is literally nothing off the table in terms of what he's willing to pursue. And to participate in a murder, you have to have a pretty shallow conscience, if not a complete lack of conscience, because he knows the difference between right and wrong. He just doesn't care.
Yeah.
She was on the board of the Moraine Valley Community College, a local community college.
The night of her disappearance, she went to a board meeting, and we had strong evidence that she did, in fact, get home that night. I think after she got home, she was getting undressed.
Alan whacks her in the head with a fireplace poker. He calls Corbitt, "Get over here."
Corbitt bundles Diane into the trunk of her own car and heads to dump her body where she's unlikely to be found.
Alan was going to pay Mike Corbitt $8,000 to dump the car into the canal.
To throw off any future investigation, Corbitt plants some misleading clues.
The body was found without underpants on. The assumption would be whoever killed her, some sex sort of crime, took the underpants.
Then Corbitt does something gruesome in order to cover his tracks.
I believe Corbitt himself shot her in the head. It's a .22 caliber weapon.
The gunshot wounds mask the injuries that actually killed Diane.
It was meant to look a certain scene, fit a certain scenario, if the body was ever found. It would look like Diane Masters and maybe her boyfriend went to the canal, and something bad happened on that night. Either the boyfriend or a prowler accosted her, murdered her, maybe raped her.
As long as he could be chief of police, he felt the car would stay in the canal, and that he'd be able to, control any investigations or anybody looking into the canal.
That's when he crossed to a whole new territory. That's not gambling, it's not prostitution, it's not drugs, it's murder, killing innocent people.
However, Corbitt has a big problem. One of his own men, patrolman Robert Olson, hears the gunshots.
I heard 2 shots which came from the vicinity of Willow Springs Road Bridge in the canal. I drove towards the canal.
Olson is a rare breed in Willow Springs, an honest cop, and the one person Corbitt doesn't want showing up at the scene.
As I was driving down towards the canal, I noticed that there was a vehicle that had illuminated its headlights. At that point in time, I got a little nervous. I unstrapped my gun, and the vehicle started coming towards me. When it came towards me, I was able to identify it as Mike Corbitt's private car.
Believing himself above the law, corrupt police chief Michael Corbitt is now involved in the murder of Diane Masters. He thinks he's got away with it. But leaving the crime scene, Corbitt runs into patrolman Robert Olson.
He pulled up to my window. I recognized that it was Mike Corbitt.
Everything okay, Chief?
And he told me, there's no reason for you to go down to the canal.
It's nothing. I checked it out. Head back to the station.
Corbitt's fate lies in Olson's hands.
Mike said he checked the area out, and there was no one down there shooting. At that point in time, Mike pulled away. When he pulled away, I made a U-turn and pulled out and never went down to the canal. Corbitt was someone that you didn't confront. He's, that type of individual. If he said something goes, it goes.
With Corbitt in complete control, Diane's body stays undisturbed in its watery grave.
My wife called me and said Alan called, and it was later in the afternoon, and she didn't come home last night, and they're worried about her. I knew immediately that she was murdered, and I had a very, very good idea of who the killers were. It was tough. It was extremely, extremely tough.
It's kind of a murderer's dream to commit a murder and then be assigned to investigate it. Gee whiz.
Everybody in the community was talking about, where is Diane? People had no idea how a vehicle could disappear and Diane Masters could disappear. Rumors were the car was in the canal. The problem was Mike Corbitt was still the chief of police, and nobody would ever go into that canal while Mike Corbitt was the chief of police.
Corbitt is at the height of his untouchability.
They've planned a perfect murder, People who investigated are the ones who killed her.
As the months go by, Corbitt's corruption continues unchecked until Willow Springs holds a mayoral election.
The prior mayor was voted out. When the new mayor was elected, one of the things he vowed was to get rid of the corruption in Willow Springs.
This couldn't be worse news for Corbitt. The town council holds a meeting with corruption at the top of the agenda.
Once you start to draw too much attention to your town, it starts to make some civic leaders and so forth nervous.
You're layman here in this situation.
The council has no concrete proof, but Corbitt's shield of untouchability has been dented.
They probably knew what was going on or had some suspicions one way or another. They finally said, dude, you gotta go.
You have no idea what is going on outside.
The new mayor fired Mike Corbitt and most of the Willow Springs Police Department. I was one of the officers that was lucky enough to be asked back.
Yeah.
Desperate to be reinstated, Corbitt calls his mob connections.
wants him to resign.
But he is in for a shock.
What?
With Corbitt now drawing so much unwanted attention to its activities, the Mafia chooses not to help him. Without his powerful backers, Corbitt is forced from office. But the Mafia does not completely abandon Corbitt. He knows too much and can still be valuable to them as an earner. So they arrange a job as an investigator at the nearby Cook County Sheriff's Office.
The mob always fixes everything. They can keep you from going to jail. And so if you're someone like Michael Corbitt, who's had so much success, police officer and mobster, you can see how he could feel like no one's gonna touch me.
Corbitt returns to his usual routines until December 1982, when a gruesome discovery is made.
A barge had gotten snagged at the canal. When a diver went down to see what had snagged the barge, lo and behold, there was a automobile graveyard. So many cars had been dumped in roughly the same location, caused a blockage in the canal.
She disappeared on the 18th or 19th of March. 9 months later, on Saturday, the 11th of December, her body was found in the trunk of her car.
The body had been in the canal for 9 months. The body was seriously decomposed. The amount of evidence that could be gotten from the scene and from the facts itself was rather small.
The little evidence there seems to point in one direction.
It looked like something on the order of a Lover's Lane kind of homicide.
It's a theory that Corbitt's old friends at the Willow Springs PD are happy to go along with.
The police that were assigned to it basically were the police that were in Alan's pocket. You know, Diane was a normal-sized person, but Corbitt was a big guy, long legs. And I always, whenever we have one of these dump jobs, I want to know how the seat is set. Because if he got in there, he'd push the seat all the way back. They destroyed the car. His friend at the tow company destroyed the car. So I never saw the car. That's to me, Mike Corbitt. And nothing much happened with the case. You know, everybody knew or suspected, at least the ladies in the beauty parlor, suspected that Alan was involved, you know.
Alan wanted to have the body cremated immediately. Why? He wanted it cremated so there'd be no evidence that they could go after at a future date. But so I used the aspect of, no, she's a practicing Catholic, you know. So they had his order, you know, revoked to have her cremated. And so early on, I made calls to the FBI. I told them, I'm worried about the investigators. They're not doing this, they're not doing that. Maybe somebody else should look into this. Kept bothering them.
The state police got involved, but people weren't coming forward, mainly because they were afraid. It wouldn't have been wise. They didn't want to end up in the canal. It was just a mess.
He knew a lot of people in the mob, so Mike Corbitt was able to skate through without ever worrying about being caught. I thought Mike believed he was untouchable. I don't think he ever thought that he would be caught.
In committing a murder, he really has crossed a threshold. And so to be part of a murder makes complete sense to him because he will get away with it. In his own mind, he's probably saying, I challenge you, I dare you to pin this on me because you're not going to, because I'm that good and I'm that invincible and I'm that untouchable. So he has definitely crossed a boundary.
For the next 5 years, Corbitt acts like nothing's happened. But not all of his old crimes have been snuffed out. And one that's been smoldering for nearly a decade is about to heat up again. Over the last 20 years, Police Chief Michael Corbitt has worked both sides of the law. In deep with the mob, he's extorted millions of dollars, is involved in arson, and is an accomplice in an unsolved murder. But what he doesn't know is that now the tide is turning against him. Ever since Corbitt inherited a fortune from a top-level gangster, he has been under investigation by U.S. Attorney Thomas Scorza.
There was so much public corruption and police corruption that he could get away with what he did for a long period of time.
Out of the blue, a ghost from Corbitt's past returns to haunt him. The owner of the tavern Corbitt allowed to be burnt down, Raymond Gluzek.
So I had this bar, all right?
Gluzek was in trouble with the DEA on a small narcotics matter, and he told us the story about how, having gotten into business trouble, he decided to burn down his bar to collect the insurance on that. To do that in the Willow Springs area, one went to get the permission of Michael Corbitt.
It's exactly what Scorza needs to get Corbitt before a judge.
Just come, just give it a minute. Just let's sit and talk. Grab coffee.
On May 20th, 1987, Corbitt is arrested for his part in the Torch Tavern insurance fraud.
It was a big victory for us because our goal was to obtain a significant sentence against him in order to try to get him to talk a little bit about the other cars and other matters that had happened in Willow Springs.
He pleads guilty and is sentenced to 4 years in jail.
That was a very disappointing sentence in that case. The typical service time on a 4-year sentence might be only 18 months or 24 months or so on. Put a time limit on our effort to prosecute the bigger case, the Masters case.
Again, lack of cooperation hampers the investigation.
People were reluctant to talk to the FBI. They didn't want any investigation because they figured people start squealing, they're going to involve me in this, so let's just forget it.
This is someone with a disordered personality and a very skewed worldview. So even though he's in jail, he would necessarily feel that he's still invincible. He doesn't feel like he's gonna get caught for Diane Masters' murder or ever be tied to it whatsoever. He feels like the mob and all the other people he's been using and controlling are still gonna be there for him when he gets out, and that business is gonna go on as it always had for him.
Scorza and his team carefully examine and re-examine the evidence. Then in mid-1988, after years of research, Scorza finally gets the break he needs.
You always have to have an operating hypothesis in running a case. You can't have a hard and fast theory that leads you to not think about what you have. If you have a hard and fast theory of the case, you'll overlook the implications of this, that, and the other piece of evidence. So we always had a working hypothesis. We were always ready to alter it depending on the facts as they came to us. I noticed when I looked at the Illinois State Police file that there was a gap in time between one page I was looking at and the next page I was looking at. There was 2 or 3 or 4 hours missing.
Scorza cannot find the police activity log for around the time Diane Masters was shot and dumped in the canal. He sends agents to the Willow Springs Police Department to search for the missing pages.
Find anything yet, Chris?
No, nothing.
What had happened is the investigator from the Illinois State Police had passed the timesheets through the Xerox machine on just one side and had missed the second side of the sheet.
I'm not mistaken.
The missing logs hold a vital clue to Corbitt's guilt. An entry at 11 p.m. reads, "Gunshots heard by the canal. Officer Robert Olson responds."
Jim Ross, who was the chief of police after Corbitt, had called me into his office one day. He informed me that he had the radio logs from a night where I had gone down to the canal where there were shots fired. Well, evidently that was the night Diane Masters had disappeared. Jim Ross had then asked me to talk to the FBI in regard to the incident.
We had an honest police officer tell us that he responded to a report of shots fired at the canal.
Car 34, Olson, I'm on it.
And that when he went to examine what happened, Michael Corbitt, the chief, was coming up from the canal.
Olson meets Corbitt coming out of there saying everything's okay.
And you know, you're not going to question the chief.
So the one person in all of the world that we can place at the canal at the time of the shots, the one person in the whole world was Mike Corbitt.
It's a crucial piece of the puzzle. Now Scorza can have Corbitt indicted.
He thought himself very clever because he had gotten away with so much. I'm sure he was stunned by the federal indictment.
Mike Corbitt was charged with the crime. I had no problem going in and testifying. I wanted to see that the right thing get done.
Corbitt faces a federal conspiracy charge because prosecutors cannot prove who actually killed Diane. Also indicted on the same charge is Alan Masters.
Somebody came forward and told us about Alan Masters having actually made a statement. I'm going to get Michael Corbitt to kill her. Somebody came forward after they found out that we were investigating and gave us that piece of information.
After a month-long trial, Corbitt is found guilty of conspiracy, racketeering, and later of obstructing justice.
Michael Corbitt, I sentence you to 20 years in jail.
Alan Masters is convicted of conspiracy, bribery, and racketeering, and is sentenced to 40 years. Corbitt is sent to La Tuna Federal Jail in the New Mexico desert with no chance of parole.
It gave me a sense of accomplishment, you know, to see somebody that was a official, somebody in the capacity of Mike Corbitt that thought he could commit a crime and get away with a crime, especially murder. It's very fulfilling to know that I made a difference and that Mike went down for the conspiracy to commit murder.
Michael Corbitt, unfortunately, was a man who had an explosive mix of narcissism, manipulation, and access to incredible power and control. When Michael Corbitt's finally caught and jailed for the crimes that he committed, it's very shocking to him. He is shocked that he's being treated like everyone else in the world would be treated under those circumstances. And there's not much chance that being in prison is going to rehabilitate somebody who's like that.
He isn't a man who was a good police officer. He is a man who knew how to play the game. I relish the thought of putting him in prison. He's a bully, he's a thug.
This was a good case. I mean, we worked on it for, 18, 20 months. I was pleased.
This could have easily gone the other way. I mean, this could have very easily been another one of Michael Corbitt's triumphs, you know? Yeah, we got away with murder. I could see him joking about it at a, dinner party or something with their cohorts. And no, you didn't.
Michael Corbitt thought he was untouchable. He was wrong.